Godzilla Minus One is not about Godzilla. I mean, it is, like, he's in the movie, but it's so much more than that. So let's talk about what makes this movie so much more than your typical monster film, plus all of the other things that make Godzilla Minus One one of the best films of the entire year.
Godzilla Minus One.
Ultimately, what makes this movie work is it's just a great human story. Before it's a Godzilla film, before the spectacle and the blockbuster of it all, before any of that, at its core, this is just a great human story about a man who's gone to war, survived, and he's now dealing with extreme PTSD. He's dealing with survivor's guilt, and you're just seeing him struggle and try to overcome this battle where he doesn't even know if he will ever find happiness again, or if he even deserves to find happiness again. And so even without Godzilla, this movie could just be a really compelling standalone drama about this one man. As I sat in the theater watching this movie, it was one of the coolest movie theater experiences that I've had in a long time, because you could just tell that everyone was so invested in this movie. Like, even when Godzilla's not there, even when there's no big spectacle happening, when it's just our characters together, talking, struggling, even in the quiet moments, you could just feel everyone was so intensely invested in this man's story. And I think that's what makes this blockbuster work in a way that so many other blockbusters fail to do, in that the spectacle here is elevated because you care so much about the actual story of our characters. So when the spectacle does happen, you're that much more invested because these aren't just disposable people and you actually want them to survive. And that just elevates everything else. It's like the base of this movie is so gripping that this spectacle is that much better because of it. Now, Godzilla is not the focus of this story. I know the movie is called Godzilla Minus One, but really, it's not about him. Godzilla is the villain of this story. And I know in a lot of the American MonsterVerse films, or whatever they're called, they try to turn Godzilla into more of like an anti-hero type of thing, and that's not what this is. In this movie, Godzilla is just a straight up force of nature. There's no conscience to Godzilla, there's no thought process. Godzilla is just this entity that is there to cause destruction. And in that way, you could look at Godzilla and you could feel like you could take him out of this movie, and he could instead have just been a tsunami or an earthquake or just like any force of nature that causes destruction for so many people. And really, Godzilla is just a representation of the mental battle that's going on in our character's head, where our character is trying to move on past the war and just get back to a place where he can lead a normal life. And Godzilla is just kind of the embodiment of that. You feel as though the character is trying to defeat Godzilla throughout the movie, but he's also trying to just overcome the war and destruction and be able to move past that in his life. Once again, it's really about the character and the emotional battle in his head, and Godzilla is just there to embody that and bring that aspect to life. Now, apparently this movie only cost $15 million to make, and if that's true, I got some questions. I don't get how we get Hollywood blockbusters for $200, $300 million here in America that don't look nearly as good as this film. Everything about this movie looks spectacular. I couldn't tell you what was CGI and what was not in this film, and that's how you know a movie is doing a good job. And I never once thought that this movie looked like it was made on a cheap budget or that they didn't have enough resources. Which is mind-blowing because apparently they did all of this on like $15 million. Like, Marvel movies really have no excuse at this point as to why their films still have choppy CGI. I just don't get it. I mean, even the way Godzilla sounds in this movie was incredible. Like, every time he let out a roar in this movie, you could feel the entire theater was shaking. And I'm not sure exactly what it was, but the sound design for this movie was great. Now, I'm not someone who normally brings up the scores of films, but when it comes to this movie, it has to be talked about. The score in here was honestly on the level of like Oppenheimer or The Creator and some of the best scores we've heard this year. And what was most impressive about it wasn't even when the score was going crazy in the big spectacle moments. It was actually throughout the entire movie, kind of similar to Oppenheimer again, where it felt like throughout the entire film, the score was kind of acting like its own character, where it would take all of these more quiet moments where characters are just having conversations and be able to add such intensity to them or such emotion. Now, the only thing that I didn't love about this movie was maybe the pacing at times. The pacing can drop at times and the movie feels like it's going a little bit slow, but again, it wasn't a huge issue. Now, towards the end of the film, there's actually some very interesting things that happen in the final couple moments of the film that really surprised me. Because going into this movie, I thought it was going to be a standalone film that wasn't going to get a sequel. And I'm still not sure if they're doing a sequel or not, but there's certainly things that happen in the final couple moments of the film that would make you think they are, where they plant some seeds for the future and definitely leaves you curious about where they're going with certain plot points. And when it comes to those final moments, I didn't love all of the decisions they made at the very end of the film. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to go into any spoilers here, but basically, I'm not a big fan of movies doing things at the end of their movie that kind of undermine what's come before. And that definitely feels like a little bit of what takes place here, where it felt like our characters had been working towards accomplishing something throughout the entire film, and at the ending of the movie, you just kind of undermine that. But overall, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie, and I think it's one of the best films of the entire year. So you guys let me know down in the comments below, have you seen the movie? What did you think about it? Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel for some future videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one.